Hello everybody, today we are learning to make an easy appetizer recipe, bruschetta. You only need a few ingredients and I've set them all up here, so take a look. You're going to need some olive oil. Cheese is an optional ingredient but kids love it, so I usually add cheese, some black pepper, salt, some garlic. This is balsamic vinegar. You also need a long skinny bread that kind of looks like this. Well, any bread would work, but this is a good option. And some fresh tomatoes and some basil as well. So these are the ingredients that we are going to use today. I'm going to start the recipe by first preheating the oven to 400 degrees. Look here, press bake, use the plus sign, bring the temperature to 400 and remember to push start. And now that's preheating. We also want to get a baking sheet ready. To make your work go easier when it's cleanup time, I like to use some parchment paper. This is completely optional, but if you do use parchment paper, make sure you get it to the right size. So make sure it's not coming out of the tray because that's a safety hazard. So you want to use scissors to cut the parchment paper to the right size. Line the tray, and once we put the bread slices on it, it'll stay flat. Now it's time for us to cut the bread. So look over here. The best tool to cut bread is a knife that looks like this. This is a bread knife. It has long serrated edges, so it makes it easier for us to cut the bread. Now it's a good idea to cut bread at an angle because that gives you more of a surface area to put your yummy toppings on. So I'm going to first cut one piece like this. Let me move the tomatoes to the side because we're going to need them later. So you cut one piece at an angle first, like this. Once you do that, hold the bread like this, and all the other pieces are now going to be at a bias. Now it's really your choice how thick you want the slices to be. I do like them slightly thin because I just love the flavor of the toppings more than I love the flavor of the bread. So I keep them thin, but it's really your choice. I do recommend that you keep them even sizes. And just see how this knife works. It goes back and forth like this. And you'll get some even pieces of bread. And just see the shape of the bread now. So the bread is kind of oval and has more of a surface area for you to put the toppings on. So cut as many slices as you need. Go back and forth. And then start getting your tomato mixture ready. So I'm going to put this bread on the side for now. I'll cut the tomatoes. Now for cutting tomatoes, you can always use a very sharp chef's knife, or you can also use any other serrated knife works well too. So I'll cut one tomato with each of them so that you can see how I do it. So I use the serrated knife first. So I go like this, so hold it like this first, go in the middle. Anything that is round, you want to get it flat first, right? And then you keep the flat side down, go like this. Once it's flat, it's just so much easier for you to cut it. Turn it around like this. Try to keep the slices together. It makes it easy for you to cut. And then go in again. And then you have this diced tomato that you can use. Now, I'll use this knife to show you. This also works really well. You also want to have this knife really sharp if you're planning to use it. So go like this. Turn it around and go like this. I'll cut the other tomato. I want to get rid of this part, the part that has the woody stem, so I'll get rid of that. Go like this. Hold the tomato in a tunnel. Go like this. Keep the flat side down. First cut it into slices one way. Turn it around like this. And then cut it another way. And get rid of the woody stem, which is actually on this side, and I'll get rid of it after cutting. So now that we have cut the tomato, we are going to add it to a bowl. So go like this. And we are going to add some great flavors to the tomato to make this delicious topping, which we are then going to put on the bread. So the tomatoes are in, and we are going to add some garlic to it now. You can always use garlic that comes in a jar. If you don't have that, feel free to use garlic powder, but I'm going to mince some fresh garlic here. So the way to do it is just get the dry ends off. Okay, so get rid of this and then give it a whack. Most of the skin comes off rather easily, and then you can crush it using your knife. Mince it. Going like that, going like that. Try to get the garlic pieces as fine as you can possibly get them, because nobody likes big pieces of garlic in their mouth, especially because the bread is only going to be toasted for a few minutes. So the garlic really would not have much of a chance to cook down a lot. So you want to just have garlic into really small pieces, but it really adds an amazing flavor. If you don't like garlic, skip that. There's no need to add garlic if you don't like it. So to this, I'm going to now add 1/4 teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of balsamic vinegar. You can also use red wine vinegar, a pinch or two of black pepper, and some fresh basil leaves. So I'll show you how you can cut some basil. And again, these are ingredients that you can do according to your own liking. You want to stack the leaves one on top of the other. You can certainly go ahead and just roughly break the leaves on top of this tomato mixture, and that's just fine. I just want to show you how to chiffonade basil, so that's why I'm doing this, because it looks pretty. So you want to roll up the leaves into a bundle like this, so it becomes like a cylinder. And then you just want to hold it like this carefully and just run the knife through it. And then what you get are these long pretty ribbons, and they look really nice on top of the bread. They also look very nice on a salad. So think about chiffonading the basil whenever you want to make a dish look pretty, which is why we are doing it here. So now we are going to spread the tomato mixture on top of the bread. Now you have a couple of options here. You can always toast the bread separately and serve the tomato mixture on the side and have people add their own mixture on the bread. But what I'm going to do is I'll just brush the bread with olive oil and then put the tomato mixture on it and then put it in the oven, because I think it's just a quick way of doing it. And also, whenever I've made this dish for the kids, I've added some cheese on top, which is not really that traditional, but my kids love it. So what I always do is I just do like a one-step bruschetta. So I just brush the bread with some olive oil, and I'm brushing both sides of it. And remember, you don't want to add too much olive oil, especially you don't want the olive oil to drip all over the paper, because that will cause some smoke inside your oven, and then your fire alarm would go off, which is never fun. So be mindful of that. You do want to have olive oil on the bread, but you don't want too much of it on the paper. Also, always be mindful of little things like keeping the olive oil bowl close to the tray, just so that you don't spill it all over the kitchen counter, so that your cleanup is easier. So you got some olive oil on both sides of the bread. Some people like to just toast the bread and not put anything on it. And then after the bread comes out of the oven, they rub some garlic on it. They serve some olive oil or butter on the side and let people add their own butter or olive oil on it. I just like this version because it's easy. So now what we have to do is we just have to spoon the tomato mixture on the bread. And once again, it's your choice how much you want on it. If you don't like tomatoes too much, just put a little. And remember, there's so much other flavor going on. There's balsamic vinegar, there's garlic. So even a little bit goes a long way if that's what you like. So go ahead and spoon all of the tomatoes on top of the bread. And then it's your choice. If you want to add some cheese, add that, or you can skip the cheese. And now what you want to do is add some cheese on top. You can always use a spoon, but I prefer to use my hands because then I can control it better. And once again, I'm trying to not get too much of it on the paper, but mostly on just the bread. And this is completely optional. Skip this step. Some people like to add some Parmesan cheese right into the tomato mixture so that there's the cheese flavor in the tomatoes. But I'm using mozzarella cheese that I'm putting on top. How much you use is entirely up to you. It almost tastes like a little mini pizza. And see how the parchment will help us in cleanup later, because no matter what you do, there'll be some cheese that's going to get onto the tray, and that's okay. And now it's time for us to put it in the oven. Be careful when you open the oven. Keep your face away. Always use an oven mitt. Put this in, and you can set the timer for about 7 minutes. That's what I'm going to do right now. But you really have to keep an eye on it because it depends on how thick your bread slices are. That's how much time more or less it can take. Also, it depends on how much toppings are on it, how much cheese is on it. Also, ovens vary. So keep an eye on it. You just want the bread to get toasty. You want the cheese to melt a little. And if you like it really nice and crispy, give it an extra minute while you're watching it. So I'm just going to keep an eye on it at around 7 minutes and see if it's ready to be taken out. So I can hear the beep at the end of 7 minutes, and I'm looking at this bruschetta. The cheese has melted nicely. The bread kind of looks crispy on the edges, so I'm going to take it out and put it right here. I have to turn off the oven. Remember to clear that. So here it is, this easy breezy bruschetta recipe. Serve it the way you like it. The bread appears to be nice and crunchy and toasty. The cheese has melted. And you can also make it look prettier by adding some more garnishes on it. You can add some more Chiffonade basil. And you see how this cheese has melted all over this baking sheet, which is why we use the parchment paper, so the cleanup is so much easier. So one should think about safety and cleanup always when you're cooking. And here's some basil. So I'm going to put some Chiffonade basil on top just before serving, just to make it look pretty and taste good as well. And there it is. Now you can always do other variations of it. As I had mentioned, you can always toast the bread separately, take it out, rub some garlic on it, and serve that along with the bruschetta mixture that you have made. So serve the tomato mixture separately and serve the bread separately. That's one way of doing it. Now you can do many variations to this recipe. Change the cheese, try another cheese, try other roasted vegetables. I think roasted red peppers are great on this. If you want to make a dinner out of it, you can also add some cooked meat to it. Add some chicken, add some ham. There's so many variations. It's endless possibilities. Use what you have, be creative, and enjoy.